That time, Alexandra was about 6 years old. And it seemed like from that time forward, all she wanted to do was to be with me, her father. She'd rather go out in the backyard and let me watch her turn cartwheels than to have her friends over to play. In fact, sometimes I needed a break. I would say, Alexandra, are you sure you don't want to go to your cousins? You can go swimming. You sure you don't want to invite your friends over? She'd say, no, Daddy, I just want to stay here with you. Even now, she's 14 years old. We're still the best of friends. She'll come up during the day at the house and put her arm around me. We'll laugh, talk, have a good time. She's like Victoria. She can't keep her hands off of me. But you know what that is? That's wishful thinking. What that is, seriously, that's God restoring the years. That's God turning back time. Why don't you ask God to restore any opportunities that you've missed? Why don't you ask Him to restore relationships that are not what they should be? God knows how to restore the years. 2 Kings chapter 8, there's the story about Elisha and this lady that was good friends with him, and her son died, and Elisha came, prayed for the boy, and he came back to life. Later, there was a great famine in the land. Elisha told this woman that she needed to move to another city because the food was going to be so scarce. So she left there and went to the land of the Philistines. 7 years later, the famine was over. She was so excited about coming back home. But when she arrived, she found that somebody was living in her house, farming her land, making money off of her property. She couldn't believe it. She said, what are you doing here? This is my house. I built this place. They wouldn't budge. They weren't about to leave. She didn't know what to do, so she decided to go see the king. Now, this king wasn't a godly man. She didn't have any connection with him. She didn't even know if the king would see her. But when she arrived, it just so happened that Gehazi, that was the assistant to Elisha, he happened to be there visiting with the king. The king was very intrigued by the prophet Elisha. He asked Gehazi to tell him some stories about the miracles that Elisha had performed. Just so happened that Gehazi started off telling this story about this little boy that died and how Elisha prayed and he came back to life. Right as he was telling it, perfectly on cue, this lady walked in the room. Gehazi was amazed. He said, King, that's the lady I'm talking about right there. It was her son that came back to life. The king said, is this true? She said, exactly true. And the king was so moved, not only by the miracle, but by the fact that this lady had shown up unannounced, perfectly on cue. He said to the lady, ma'am, what can I do for you? She explained her situation, how she had gone for 7 years and now she was back home and somebody was living in her house. The king said, no problem, I'll take care of that. He instructed his officials to make sure that she not only got her house back, but he said, see to it that she gets all the money from any crops that were harvested during the 7 years that she was gone. What she had lost by being away for 7 years was returned to her in one day. That was God restoring the years, paying her back for what should have been hers. Now, some of you are due payback. You've lost some things. The good news is they still have your name on them. Your health, your dreams, your finances, your relationships. If you'll have this restoration mentality like this lady, God will pay you back for everything that should have been yours. God can make up for 7 years of loss with one good break. God can take 15 years of struggle and lack and cause one person to show you favor that will make up for those 15 years. You may have struggled in your health, in a relationship, in your mind, no peace, but get this down in your spirit. It's payback time. God is going to start restoring everything that should have been yours. Some of you are raising a child that's difficult. You never complain. You love your child, but it's taken your joy, your passion. God is going to pay you back. He knows exactly what you're owed. He's going to give you greater strength, greater joy. You may have missed out temporarily, but you need to get ready. What you're owed is still in your account, and God knows how to get it to you. You may have put up with an illness for a long time, worked at a job where you're not being treated right, struggled with an addiction for many years. Be encouraged today. Payday is on its way. God's not only going to turn it around, He's going to restore everything back to you that should have been yours. The rest of your life is going to be more rewarding, more fulfilling than anything you've experienced before. That's what it says, Psalm 66:12. We went through the fire, through the flood, but God brought us out to a place of great abundance. That's what God is going to do for you. You've been through the famine, through the tough time, but you passed the test. Now God's going to bring you not to a place of abundance, but a place of great abundance, great joy, great friendships, great health, great income. Our attitude should be, God, I'm ready. I know it's payback time. I'm not sitting around focused on what I lost and who hurt me and where I missed it. I'm focused on the fact that you're a God of restoration. You're full of mercy. You know exactly what I'm owed, and you promised you would pay me back and bring me to a place of great abundance. That's the attitude that allows God to restore, to make up for lost time, lost health, lost wages, lost victories. One time in the Old Testament, an enemy army had surrounded the Israelites and cut off their food supply. The Israelites were eating things that were unthinkable. A few more days and they certainly would have starved to death. The prophet Elisha showed up and said, by this time tomorrow, there will be so much food, you'll be able to buy a loaf of bread for 1 penny. The assistant to the king said, Elisha, what are you talking about? Have you lost your mind? Even if God opened up the windows of heaven, that would not happen. Notice God said restoration is coming. It's going to happen sooner than you think. It's going to be greater than you imagine. You're coming to a place of great abundance. But this assistant only looked at it in the natural. He checked the stock report. He looked at his bank statement. He watched the nightly news. Said it's impossible. There's no way that could happen. But there were 4 lepers sitting outside the city gates. They said, we have nothing to lose. We're going to starve to death anyway. Let's march down toward the enemy's camp and see what's going on. As they started walking, God multiplied the sound of their footsteps. They sounded like a huge army was approaching. The enemy army got afraid, took off running, left their food, left their treasures, left a whole camp filled with supplies. Those 4 lepers went back to their family, the Israelites, and said, come with us. There's more than enough. The people